had our conversation about
private
Him fucking
information,
himself.
not for the
Yeah.
public.
what did you say?
Nothing.
No.
I was talking about you rubbing my prostate really good with that person, but that's all.
Now we're streaming.
Is that what that comment on social media was about with the peeing thing?
Which one? Whose?
I talk about peeing a lot. You're going to be more specific.
About that, I thought it was you or one of my co-hosts said that when you bottom and it's really
Oh
good.
yeah. So there's the whole. I've been improving my sex life with my health initiatives and everything. So Bailey and I have been better sex than we've ever had before. Like, there's that initial honeymoon period after you get together, and even after you move in together, we're like years past that. But we've like rediscovered this whole new sexual renaissance with each other, and he has fucked the living hell out of me a few times the last week, and because I've given him these new leases, as a pup, I've been exploring that. I'm like, okay, you can use me however you want. Just make me do it. Just put me in a collar and I will obey, kind of thing. It's a power exchange. It's still with my consent.
Yes,
So, but we had a buddy over on Friday too, and they both fucked the living hell out of me. And I got up on Friday morning. I'm like, why can't I pee? I can't. I'm just standing there. I'm moving all the muscles in the right way. It just wasn't going. And he's like, oh yeah, if we get fucked a lot, they put a lot of pressure on your prostate. It like rearranges things a little bit, and it takes a minute for your guts to get back in the right position so that it flows the way you're used to. I didn't know bottoms had this kind of anatomical complications in life. I'm like, good Lord.
Why?
Well, it makes sense though. I mean, and this is true of any part of the body, if you abuse that area of the body.
Abuse is a strong word.
Abuse is a technical term.
If you erotically utilize.
Erotically utilize.
If you do things to it, if you overstimulate an area in such an aggressive manner, the muscles of the organs will react to that. And what I was going to say is actually your prostate might have been swollen, which might have been part of the issue.
It was. It was exactly what it was. It was it's not used to that kind of
it was going like, whoa, what the fuck? What is going on?
I know, right? You and your friend need to calm down.
Can I get a break? Can I get a break? Smoke break? Like 2 minutes. I mean, 2.
No, I think it's more like a day, 2 days. From the sounds of it, the prostate was like, I got a migraine. You gonna learn something?
Right. Right. Remember when I tell you had a headache? You have a headache. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You're gonna pay for this in the morning when you gotta pee.
Okay,
we ready to record?
Oh, I think so.
We're on air. We're waiting on the producer to see if we're ready to jump into the beginning of the show.
Nice.
Right here.
Adam, son of a bitch.
Today is the 9th. I should know that because I was doing stuff for the 9th that worked tonight, last night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Adrian probably doesn't know, but I woke up to a cubby sneaking into my bed with only a jock on. It was amazing.
Good for you.
Anyways.
That said, are we ready to start?
I think we're ready.
All right. First off, so you guys can hear the first part. Let's. Come on. Yeah. There you go.
Sound check? Yes, no.
Working on it.
Okay.
Because Skype is stupid, I have to share my entire screen.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So sound check.
Yes.
Cool.
Heard it.
Clutch the pearls, kids.
Alright. Jeez. Can't find anything for some reason. Alright. And in 3, 2, 1. Sunday, December 9th, 2018. I'm Jeff. Or 2018. Anyways.
Who's your bear? That's right. I am your bear.
I'm Damon.
I don't brew the tea, I just serve it.
And that makes me Gary.
Don't hurt nobody with your bad self.
And welcome to Comes Out Loud, the Bear Podcast of Indeterminate Length, episode number 490, almost to 500, folks. And with getting down to 10, we have with us Hadrian, who's right above
Woohoo!
Woo!
Hi, everybody.
You could say that Daddy Hadrian's on top of you. Where's my popcorn? Let me go.
In my mood nowadays, I would totally love you to be on top of me. Anyways.
We can trade out occasionally.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to keep my verse card. So in order to do that, I need to stop topping for a while, or I need to not only top for a while, I need to also bottom. So, although for some reason it seems like it's really hard to find tops. Anyways,
It's a lot of averages.
Yeah. So Gary,
Yes.
what are we talking about today?
Okay, so today's topic is very on trend, which is interesting for us because we don't do breaking news type of topics necessarily. However, this is significantly impacting to the LGBTQ community. The title of today's show is R.I.P. Tumblr porn, and we'll get to that in a moment. But back on March 25th of this year, COL490 was called FOSTA Impact, and we did a whole episode talking about the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act concept and what that would do to us. We're going to put a link into the show notes on our blog. If you time jump to 31 minutes 10 seconds, you can actually get right into where we start the topic outside of the banter and the stuff in the beginning. We, at that time, were talking about how the government had passed FOSTA, SESTA, which is the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. The whole thing behind this that was passed by Congress and signed by the president was to keep sex trafficking to a minimum. However, the verbiage and how it affects the digital domain is having huge effects. And at the time, when we had that show, we talked about how Craigslist ads for adults, the casual encounters, all that stuff had disappeared. And we were speculating back in March about what the future could be. And I kind of went on this riff about, like, what about apps and what about, all these other things. Fast forward to today.
Well, last week.
Yeah, Monday, a week ago, on the 3rd, Tumblr made a policy change announcement that they are no longer going to allow non-safe for work content. Basically, if I recall correctly, anyone who has an account that has ever been flagged with that content or is already described that way using one of your settings in a filter, as of the 17th, in just over a week, your profile will still exist, but will be locked down into private mode that only you can see anything that's there. No one else can ever see anything that you were to post, and you can't see anybody else's. So you basically end up kind of boxed in and closeted. And there was a huge outpouring on social media. Those of us that on Tumblr basically had a what the fuck moment. And so today's discussion is about what that could potentially be and what's going to come in the future. Also to rewind a little bit, I didn't do the research on this, but we talked about Tumblr before when Yahoo sold Tumblr to Verizon. Actually, we talked about, I think, when Tumblr was sold to Yahoo. We were like, what does this mean for the future of the platform and that kind of jazz? And so it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been up, it's been down. We've had these issues. The past 12 to 18 months has probably been this whole thing about video content isn't really allowed. So people were doing series of GIFs to get around that, linking to where another platform could host the content because Tumblr was going through this whole identity crisis. And I understood their concept was we are not a adult content platform hosting site. So I understood where they were coming from. Like if somebody else hosts it, like XTube, Pornhub, whatever, we don't care because we're not hosting it. Like if you're linking to wherever it's actually sitting at. But people were always trying to find their ways around that. And then we had lots of other like issues, which I'm sure we'll get into. So we wanted to bring Hadrian on because as a person who has worked in the past in the adult industry and knows what the effects of social media are with it and how Tumblr was a big piece of that. I mean, our podcast, we've had a section on Tumblr for many years now, which is about to end, I think, because I imagine our Cubs Out Loud podcast account, along with our personal accounts, are all about to be frozen, so to speak. So that's kind of all the premise to get us caught up to date. And there's a couple of questions in that. But before we get into that, I'll let you guys say your initial thoughts.
For me, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I get it. It's their site. They can do whatever they want. I understand that. On that same token, a lot of the stuff I keep reading about and hearing about is how much is impacting, artists, queer artists, and sex workers, and all of those other things that are using the platform. Just like a la around the time when we were talking about FOSTA and Craigslist, and those people who were now using that platform for their legitimate work are now having to go find another platform and find another outlet, and that kind of concerns me in some ways. Other than that, personally, my blog, if you follow me on Tumblr, I'm pretty much a reblog person. I very rarely post my own content, if any at all. And most of the stuff I post is reblogs of other people's stuff, sexual, otherwise, mostly sexual. If it goes away, for me, it goes away. Or if it goes into this privacy setting or whatever, that's fine. Like at the end of the day, I mean, it was fun while it lasted. I'm not as worried about it, but I can see why people are worried. I can see why people are concerned. I can see where there are issues about this censorship and other things that are out there being said. I can see where those people are coming from.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're not a content creator that relies on the platform, say, as our income base or as a way to make a living. I'm with you, Damon, in that I have actually quite a number of Tumblr profiles, one of which explicitly is in the SFW. But that one, like you said, is 98% just reblog of other people's stuff. And over the past probably 2 years, I mean, and I'm going to tip the hat to you, Hadrian, on this about you talked in the past about people posting clips of porn and, the issues that we have where people take someone else's content and claim it as their own, whether they intend to mislead or not, because they may not realizing that reposting is technically taking away the rights of the individual who originally posted. So I really kind of cracked down on that and tried to, I removed accounts, quit following them that were infamous for just basically dumping their personal spank bank library into the account, or worse yet, making collage groupings of pictures of beautiful people, but were not attributing it back to them. They were just, and they weren't claiming it as them. So this isn't catfishing. They were just here's 10 pictures of this, beautiful guy. And then we're all hey, that's Jay Mobear. Not cool. And that was one of the things I got on a crusade on that Fox Bear kind of did a bunch of, which was I took something that he had posted and reworded a little bit, but basically it was don't be an asshat. This is so uncool that you're taking this content and putting it back out there. Which I think is part of the issue that led a little bit to Tumblr's decision. I've seen a lot of stuff back and forth that the reason that Tumblr did it was because they got a huge smackdown about child porn being hosted, and they weren't really effectively handling it. And I can't necessarily disagree with it. I don't have any proof of it. But after the shenanigans of their logarithms and their bots and their human team, quote unquote, that was filtering things as of last Monday, it was just insanity for about 4 days. Because you name it, it was getting flagged. Didn't matter what it was. Like their own policy about nipple exposure or whatever was just bullshit. Like everything was crap.
Actually, artists have had to resort to changing the colorization of their of art so that their automatic scanning engines can't detect it. Because they're using an automated process, is what I believe, and they're looking for skin tone information and looking for shape information. And
interesting.
It's really awful. It's not working.
Well, I saw a post that cracked me up about how if you used if 50% of your image was of an owl, like that would bust the algorithm or whatever, would it still get posted? And I was like, really? Like it amuses me to no end, but at the same time, I'm like, it's so sad. Like,
or an owl.
So,
yeah, really.
What I picked up on what happened is that sometime in the last year, Tumblr decided to automate and maybe get a team involved on some of its censorship issues. It's trying to screen out porn. And then about 3 months ago, collectively, almost all of Tumblr noticed, hey, we can post not safe for work content again. I did it. We were just suddenly able to post dirty pictures and videos, and they were still being tagged, but they were being tagged based on your account settings. Because back a few years ago, after Oath was formed, Verizon acquired Tumblr, they made some policy changes, and you could flag your entire Tumblr blog as explicit, or they would flag you for you. So basically, they created a registration system they are now using to target your blog and remove you. So you self-registered for something they were going to get you for all along, saying they didn't say they wouldn't do that, but typically when you do those kinds of self-registrations, like, not to, are you FTM or are you trans in some way? You could have flagged yourself like that, and then Tumblr could have come up tomorrow and says, no, we don't need y'all on our platform anyway. They could have targeted anyone, and they've targeted the sexual culture on Tumblr as a whole. They are grouping in the child molesters and with the FTMs who are looking for body empowerment, the artists who are making really cool art, and some of it happens to be sexual, women who are taking artistic pictures of their body that happen to show the nipples. They're grouping them all in with horrible people just based on the word sex and just clustering them all together and shipping them out. It's really stigmatizing to, how granular we as a culture in America have worked over the last 50 years to destigmatize sexuality as this evil, horrible, dirty thing, and making it so that it can be positive and open to everyone, and people can have their own interpretations of how they want to express their sexuality. And we've just said, no, because Apple told us we had some child porn, now all of you have to go, which I think is a red herring. I don't think that's the actual reason.
Agreed.
Because I think they got called out because I think they turned off. I think a couple of months ago, when everybody noticed their video, they could post videos again, that Verizon had done something to its censorship team or changed something about its software, because it worked for a few months, and it worked until the day Apple removed the Tumblr app from the App Store sometime last month. When Apple removed the app from the store, all of a sudden Tumblr went into overload mode and started flagging everything. They suddenly had a team involved. Things were getting removed. They were doing something, but I think they tried to save money, because Verizon isn't making money from Tumblr. Tumblr's not making money on ads. Oath isn't. I mean, they have to do something with the platform. So they can either try to sell it, porn and all, or they can strip it down and says, hey, we have this minimalist, bare bones, platform we've now created, and we think we can sell it. My theory is I think Apple wants to buy it because they've been wanting to get in social media for a while, but they don't want all that porn to come along with it.
And just
so they're sterilizing the platform before sale. That's what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. And I've read that online. I wanted to, as a quick side point, let folks know, when we're talking about Oath, it's a subsidiary of Verizon Communications. According to online Wikipedia, it serves as the umbrella company for digital content subdivisions such as AOL and Yahoo. The reason why that's important is because I think it's easier just to say Verizon, but technically there's a business name that's involved, and it can be really confusing if you see Oath and you're like, what the fuck is that? Because I've never heard of it. Yeah, it's kind of like Alphabet versus Google.
And this is the kind of shell game that Verizon is playing to either avoid blame or place blame. That's exactly why there's so many different shell companies involved here, or shell names, that is.
Yeah. So, and I understand what you mean, Hadrian, that like there was this up and down about the service, the way the platform worked for a long time. People were doing these goofy things. Like some people had theorized that if you spent the first 2-3 seconds showing video that wasn't porn, but was something else innocuous, and then you switched it to your own, like just a video of you jacking off or whatever, that you could then like you could get past the algorithm or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which I never really saw that one take off, which very much intrigued me.
We shouldn't be trying to work around their system like that. That shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah. It's I've heard, like, I've seen I remember all of that stuff, and I remember people like getting all upset and then going to like the GIFs and making the GIFs and putting everything elsewhere. And it wasn't annoying or anything like that. It was just sort of like, well, you're trying to skirt around this, like, we don't want to host your pornography, but instead of like not banning it outright, you're kind of allowing people to make these go rounds, you know?
Right. And the law change that happened a few months ago that Trump signed and, you know, Congress passed was definitely trying to get rid of sex trafficking and people posting content of, you know, people underage or people that have been kept against their will. That's a noble aspect, and it's something that should have been done. But again, they took and packaged it all up as everyone who's engaged in any kind of sex are all gross, and they all need to go in this same bucket so that they can all be punished together, so that we can and go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's sort of the main issue, is that it's now become, you know, people who I mean, I follow people who use the blog specifically for like being very body positive and showing themselves off and being getting all those likes and getting all that's, you know, not self-affirmation, but affirmation from others that, you know, hey, you look nice. And then to equate that to someone who is basically taking someone and abusing their ability to putting them online in a negative way, like that just seems kind of like super fucking shitty to me. It doesn't make sense to me why we can't delineate between the two.
And what Tumblr could have done a long time ago was engage the community, engage the problem a little more creatively, and say, okay, we have this one individual who's posting pictures of themselves, they're reblogging pictures of their friends, they are an actual real community, and they're making themselves isolated. They're not reblogging to the My Little Pony forum or anything else dumb. They're truly an isolated segment there. And then they look at somebody else who's like, and this guy right here is, as you put, Gary, and I love this, he's posting his online spank bank, essentially stuff he's stolen, stuff that's modified or changed in ways from other things. And even, you know, there's some really gross abuses that have really flooded Tumblr, and I'm sure that they saw a majority of their usage was coming from these handful of porn blogs instead of actual users who are an organized, you know, community cluster. Instead of figuring out how to separate those things or create tools that could do that, they decided, you know, oh well, we don't want, if we define those communities, therefore we have to use those definitions if we ever decide to turn against them or use them in this sort of case where they have to remove content. And they didn't want to do that. And now Tumblr's dead.
Now they're doing the nuke it from orbit. But
hold on.
Method.
It'll play. It's not going to play. It's going to be stupid. So as far as I'm concerned, good riddance, Tumblr. I've been heralding its end for a long time, because my theory, I have this theory about social media movement that says that people don't stay inside the same platform and wait for it to fix itself. Social media platforms are inherently corrupt and eventually learn how to take advantage of their users to an effort that is completely detrimental to their communities. AOL did it, Yahoo did it, MySpace, Foursquare, even the little ones like Urban Spoon, those kind of things. They always learn how to abuse their communities in ways that they don't want to use it anymore. They restrict the settings and people move on to something else. And Tumblr is now in that same boat. They've now abused their communities to the point where people are just going to vacate. I thought another platform would appear before people vacated from Tumblr. And it is very surprising to me that people are moving to Twitter instead, which is kind of a step backwards. But Twitter's kind of been the same platform for a long time. They've changed some minor things, and they've had some white supremacist problems on their platform along with Russia, but you know, it's still a viable platform, and I'm still shocked that the Tumblr community is moving there en masse, which is kind of a positive thing.
I'm not really shocked by it, and I'm gonna say something that's probably really not going to sit well with some people, but this is what it is. I think it's about sheep. They're just following in mass because they don't know any different, and most individuals are not that tech savvy to understand platforms versus terms of service or agreement of use and any of that kind of stuff. So they're just moving to wherever things kind of make sense. And understandably, Twitter is already established, well established. So currently people are like, okay, this isn't a brand new thing that I can't not necessarily trust. I just need to know what to do. And there's a lot of people doing things like posting and saying, hey, I just created a Twitter account. Does anybody want to give me like the 6 steps or 6 rules I need to follow? Like, how does it work? Because, and I admit, like, I've never really been a big Twitter follower or user. Part of it was the 140 character limit in its inception for a long time. And also I just didn't understand the privacy nuances. To me, it seemed like everything was public to the world, period. And that was the end of it. And I was like, well, I have no interest in that. Like, there are some things I don't want going out that way. It also wasn't clear in my head until this past week. Oh, I can have more than one Twitter account. The downside about this, though, I found is you cannot easily switch between the accounts if you're not using a mobile version or a third-party app of some sort. Right. So that, to me, in and of itself, is kind of a pain in the butt. But if you're used to using a mobile device, then that has enough user in-depth building that you can just kind of within 2 clicks switch from one account to the other. So it's possible to do that. I mean, I've seen a bunch of people mouth off and been like, "Great, now I am on Twitter. How horrible!" Like, I mean, they just like design wise and other things, and
Twitter may well be a stopgap. It may just be the current platform we can go to, and who knows? Apple may turn its attention to Twitter next and say, "Hey, we got a problem." Who knows? Twitter could say, "Hey, this isn't what we really expected, and we were looking at policy changes too." Or people could say, "Hey, what is that new one everybody's going on about? Tumblr," which is the worst fucking name. But everybody's talking about this new thing called Tumblr, which is a porn-specific Tumblr clone. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like you're going to get sued into oblivion for copyright infringement. Let's see what happens. Yeah. So there's going to be there's always going to be something else, and everybody's going to migrate to it in some capacity.
Yeah. And again, I think we hit the nail on the head for it. That is the easier way to go. Like, people are going to Instagram, people are going to Twitter, people are going to a couple of other sites. But I'm noticing mostly people are going back to Instagram and back to Twitter to kind of like do their things, and that's where they can put their not safe for work content. And I'm like I think Hadrian, you actually mentioned it in one of your your Tumblr blogs. Like, it's going to eventually come down to it that those are going to get hit too. We think it's going to be easy, but it might happen. And if it does, I think the next step will be just moving to someplace else. And I think that's what it'll always be.
So in our
go ahead.
No, thanks, Adrian. In our post that we're going to put online regarding this particular subject, there's going to be a whole series of links. One of them is a tweet thread by Cookie Cyboid that I read today that I thought was really interesting, in which she was basically saying why Tumblr and Facebook, why are they cracking down, or why are they cracking down? What's going on with that? And, there's this whole thing about it's Apple's fault. And she's like, no. It's actually SESTA and FOSTA. You've got to go back to the law. Right. None of this would have been started rolling if we hadn't put those laws into place. And it's not that the laws are on principle bad. It's the way they were written and what they do. It's too much of a blanket. And
overly broad.
Right. And like you were saying, Hadrian, the key aspect is where everything has been falling apart is that they're not dealing with the communities that actually have to be dealt with. They're stripping out the humanity concept and thinking that like a law and a logarithm, a computer program, a whatever is going to be able to fix human issues. Yeah. And it's like racism is a human issue. It can't be fixed by a bot. Bigotry, homophobia, sex trafficking. All of these other things are all based on humans, and you have to deal with the persons in order to address that. And so conceptually, it's like, yay, beautiful effort, shitty execution. It's just not working well.
It's also really disturbing the way Tumblr has focused on, and you're right, it comes down to FOSTA, it comes down to, and I do think Apple shares some of the blame here. I think removing the app from the store was a bit extreme. They could have handled that a lot better and not put Tumblr into such a panic mode, because that's what they did. They put all the executives in panic mode, and they decided the biggest change was the one that was worth it. Unless Apple's the one buying Tumblr and they're the ones who mandated the app removal.
Right. There's a lot of stuff I think we don't know. And what I was going to say as devil's advocate is perhaps Tumblr knew it was being removed and just didn't give a shit. Like,
That's right.
they put on a face of panic when in reality they knew they were being booted. I can't see these companies not talking to each other. Like, and I'm going to use
I can see Verizon really thinking we're too big for you to remove us.
Well, I think Apple may be thinking that they think, well, like, we're bigger than you're giving us recognition for. We have this amount of control over all of our users, what content they can access, because we'll just bounce your shit out of the platform. Like, your app is no longer viable. So the thing that I was going to say is, like, this is the parallel I'm going to draw, which isn't necessarily a great one. The more that keeps coming out in the press about the behind the scenes of Facebook and things that have been happening over the past, like, say 2 years, and what's been going on, and it's mostly kind of in a political realm, and some other stuff about the higher ups and how, like, they handled themselves and they didn't do things and how they reacted to stuff. I'm like, yeah, like, it's all coming back to the human factor of how things are being handled or not handled. And you just can't 0 and 1 your way out of this. It's just not going to be possible. So I agree with you, on the point, Hadrian, that you had about, we have this potential list of alternatives. We've talked about Twitter, and a platform that's been around for a while now, which is a similar built platform like Facebook called HaftyNet. If you actually have an account with HaftyNet, you log into it, it'll remind you of Facebook a long time ago. And I know the guy who created it, and he's been working on slowly developing things, but he's really been trying to create a community culture based on there, like other websites that we've had. Bear Forest still to this day, is a site that started as one thing and has kind of modified into a bunch of stuff. So that's a possibility. And there's some others. The one that we mentioned, I want to tag back to, called Tumblr. I don't know if this is the big one that was like, there's this blog that's been going around on Tumblr about how someone says that they know somebody who's going to make a big announcement, possibly tomorrow on the 10th, that there's this thing that they're trying to create that'll allow you to, like, take all your stuff over to there or copy it, yada, yada, yada. I know. I think it's questionable. I will own, I signed up for the site, this new supposed site, just to see what they're going to say they're going to be able to do and how it works. Tumblr.
Okay.
I gave them my email. I was like, I read through the stuff. I was like, okay, like, I find it interesting. I also find it very interesting that, like, I think at the time that I signed, there was like over 25,000 people that had submitted their emails, and only $10 out of $1 million in their online fundraising campaign had been donated. So I was like, boy, this is really evocative of how people want an answer, but they don't want to make an investment. And that's not a complaint. It's just this very interesting viewpoint of, okay, everyone's signing up on the bandwagon to get into this thing in case it really does become a thing. And yet on the other side, they're not recognizing that, like, Bill Gates is not swooping in with some of his malaria money, so to speak, and, like, solving this, with a financial windfall either. So I don't know what this other thing will be, if that's even it.
There's a business opportunity with what Tumblr is doing, but here's where I caution is this is a fragmentation problem now, where the community, what was just one big sexual community on Tumblr that supported each other and pushed out the bad guys and helped, and it really self-policed itself. I never saw a lot of stuff that was egregious. Yeah, occasionally I saw someone jerking off while smoking meth. Yeah, occasionally I saw some canine stuff that would end up on my board somehow, and immediately figure out how to remove that. You see, I never saw anything worse than that, thank God. But Tumblr had problems, but the community was really good. I saw that stuff maybe half a dozen times in 10 years on Tumblr. But if we allow this to fragment us, HeftyNet sounds like a great product. I hear a lot of people saying everybody's moving to WBear. I'm like, why? I mean, yeah, WBear was there before this Tumblr problem, and there's no, how am I supposed to cross network with other kink groups? How am I supposed to cross network with other people who are body positive? Why can't I look at the BBW women too? Why can't I look at the cuckold men? Why can't I look at this? There's a whole big world of complicated sexuality that we have, and now we're supposed to all go back to our own little homes where we're all safe in our own little blanket, surrounded by other people who are into what we're into. Fuck that. No, we should be able to conglomerate and collaborate in a single environment that allows all of us to work with each other and self-police. And Tumblr was able to do that for a long time. And it lost control of its own censorship capabilities, not the community. And what's going on Twitter, I think, is the same thing. That same self-policing has moved with it, and I'm trying to do my little bit of preachiness too, just because I love standing on a soapbox, and trying to tell them, hey, maybe avoid pick blogs. Focus on individuals. Focus on businesses. You got your Mr. S Leather, you got your Bad Dragon, you got all this other stuff. You got businesses that are functioning in the community, and you have individuals that are focusing in the community. Focus on those and leave those porn blogs behind, because those are the ones that are really causing problems, that are really muddling the difference between a porn community and porn content.
Yeah, and I hear.
There's
go
another
ahead.
one we haven't quite brought up, which is the Mastodon platform, which is Tumblr-ish and provides different communities. Like a couple I've seen have been Humbler.social and Bear.community, and they have where you can look at the local timeline, which is people who are in that specific community, but they also have a federated timeline, which is basically everybody, as far as I can tell. So you can, if you only want to look at people who are in the community, that specific community, you can. If you want to look everywhere, you can follow anyone from any of these little instance communities, and even follow them, so in your private timeline, you can see all of them. So, like, if I'm on bear.community, I can friend up somebody who's on humbler.social and still see their stuff in my own personal timeline.
And that's decentralized. And from what I understand, Mastodon's a little more technically complex to operate, correct? Isn't there a lot more work involved in getting something stood up?
I'm not exactly sure how that works.
I think I've looked at Mastodon before, and I've liked it, but I think there's a little more technical complexity there. But Mastodon is signaling towards something that the community is probably going to end up doing if this pressure doesn't stop. Because if Twitter turns on us and that happens, I think there's going to be even more scattering and fragmentation of the sexual culture in general. But what I think will happen before then is, because I think a lot of people, at least in my circles, a lot of people use VPNs these days. A lot of people use a lot of different tools on their phone so they can see the internet in different ways. It starts with privacy mode in your browser, but it spans in a lot of different ways. And I think the authorities need to be aware of this too, that there is a place where the internet, this form of sexual community in the internet, can go to where they lose the ability to regulate them. Oath is being used right now, and we have some laws that are kind of overbroad, but there's a real possibility that Mastodon, and even beyond Mastodon, and other functions like, Tor, and some of the other flavors of darknet that are appearing, I'm sure that there are communities looking to pop up there. And guess what? They don't give a fuck about laws.
Right.
So that's a bad thing for the community. I think if we're pushed in that kind of environment, that those kind of bad players that we were trying to push out on Tumblr, that we were able to police ourselves from, we're going to lose that ability completely, and the entire community will be stigmatized rightfully, which is not good. So there's the fragmentation problem, and going to platforms that are deeper underground both present issues for what's left of the Tumblr community.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Hadrian, specifically on that one point. I think is of the utmost concern is the fragmentation issue. I agree that when I came onto Tumblr and how I learned of it and when I joined it, it was just spank bag. But over the years, more and more has filtered in, and that's why I created multiple profiles, because this one's about the art that I like. And no offense, that doesn't really, for me personally, I didn't want to just waterfall it into the big bucket with everything else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree also, because it was a running joke for the past year and a half or so. I would see people joke about, they're kind of like peen, ass. Oh, Sailor Moon, Steven Universe, Masters of the Universe, some political shit, blah, blah, blah. Back to, porn. And that's one of the things that Tumblr was providing was this. I've seen a whole series of posts that have come out in the past week, articles and essays or whatever you want to say, people expressing about how this is really detrimental to our community because we're losing our own ground in that we had a space where we could exhibit and be our own individuals with all the complexities, because we're not just one thing. We are a whole myriad of things. And so because of that, now it's like, well, what are you going to do? So I see this because some people are like, well, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Kick, I'm on FetLife, I'm on Retcon, but like they're listing a gazillion things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not on all those things. I'm not going to create an account on all those things to keep track. And that's part of this issue is like, how are you going to have basically, from the sounds of it, a one-stop shop that allows you to still be you and show like all the colors that you are, as opposed to just this one thing. I mean, and I understand people want to compartmentalize. I get that, because for quite a bit of my life, like being part of the bear community has been very like siloed. But that's because I didn't necessarily think that the greater, broader, public understood it or like actually could appreciate it or whatever. Things may have changed now, but Damon, I think you were going to say something.
No.
That's fine. I thought, like,
I mean, honestly,
we went on, and I was like,
honestly, we've pretty much hit a lot of nails, for me. And so, in regards to all of this, it's not this is not going to be a simple. There's not going to be a simple fix, and people want a simple fix. Like, to put it simply, people want, like, where can I go to get the most people? And right now, as I can see it, a lot of people are hitting Twitter or Instagram.
That seems to be the lifeboat right now. Yeah.
Yeah. People are hitting a lot of social media platforms.
And I warn people against Instagram. Instagram is owned by Facebook and has very similar policies. You're not going to be able to post too much dirty content for long. Because once they come for you, they don't go for your pictures. They go for the whole Instagram account.
Right, which is actually your Facebook account. So what a beautiful segue, Hadrian, to talk about the other thing that was not expected to be part of today's show. Facebook changed their terms of service. People may not have been paying attention to this. So the question is, what do we think of the recent change to Facebook's own terms regarding sexual expression? There's new wording in Facebook's community standard, section 15, called sexual solicitation. On our blog, we'll have a copy paste of the actual wording. It's on our doc that we're working off of. I've also put in a link for section 14, which is adult nudity and sexual activity. But basically, Facebook is following almost the exact same thing that all other online platforms have been. And that's why this tweet thread was really important, because I think this person, Cookie, was basically saying, listen, you can gripe all you want about the platform. The platform is never the problem. Yeah, they have stakeholders and they want to make money and they have to sell ads and all that crap. The point is, they wouldn't have to do any of this if the law wasn't set into place that basically says you are responsible for all of the stuff that's on there, including the bad stuff.
Yep.
And that's when things got like kind of all haywire. And so these changes now with Facebook are freaking people out. And I get it, because like, so for example, in the stuff that is do not post in section 15, content that engages in explicit sexual solicitation by not including but not limited to offering or asking for sex act, sexual partners, sex chat, nude images, and it goes on and on. Commercial pornography. This is the part that's pissing people off. Sexually explicit language that adds details and goes beyond mere name or mentioning, such as state of sexual arousal or an act of sexual intercourse. And
you know what? I live in the same state as Zuckerberg. I live in the same state as Mark Zuckerberg. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Fuck
it's
him
very
and fuck that wording.
It's very, as I'm like kind of really quickly reading through this, and I didn't read it before the show. Sorry. Okay. It's just one of these things like sex chatter conversations, sexualized slang. It's just when
No. Let's go and skip to the end on this. Kids, delete Facebook. It's over. I've been off this shit for 90 days. It's been the best bliss I've ever had. It's like better than the first time I ever touched my own prostate. Get the fuck off Facebook. Save your life. Get off there.
Oh my god.
Give that motherfucker a bit. He makes thousands of dollars off you being on that goddamn platform every fucking year. Why? Get off.
So here's my question for you, Hadrian, because that's part of why I wanted to have you on, because I saw as soon as this hit the wire past Monday, within about 24 hours, you were being very vocal about like the demise of Tumblr, the stuff that's going on and all that. And I was like, hey, would you like to come on the show? Because we're going to have a conversation. And here's the thing I have a question for you about. I knew that you had left Facebook. You had made kind of, it was like a roller coaster in that like there was those lower hills and it was like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to do it in so long. And maybe it took a little longer.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, and I'm not, there's no criticism about that because I've had many friends who have done this. They've said, basically given double, birds to the situation and saying, if you want to find me, here's how you get in touch with me. I may have this profile, but I am not posting to it. I'm not going to ever check in. I'm not going to be on here. Since you've left Facebook, how do you stay in touch with the people that you want to stay in touch with versus those that you could stay in touch with Facebook? I don't know if you understand kind of the nuance of the question I'm asking is because like I'm literally connected to hundreds of people and yet I do not connect to those hundreds of people. And so I have this legitimate psychological impractical fear that if I leave the platform, I will lose the connection to all of those people because I only have that connection via this one thing.
Yay, FOMO.
So my first thought is, why the fuck do I need to be connected to that many people? Okay. That's my first thought. I don't need to be connected to that many people. Granted, I've met a lot of these people. I've passed a lot of them by at TBRU. I've got family on there that I saw at the last family reunion 12 years ago. I've got fans. I've got friends, people from work. I've had a lot of people on Facebook, and I'm like, God, I thought I was gonna have to use my to-do app so I could create like a reminder to check up with these people. Like, hey, old boss from 3 jobs ago, how's life? Instead of just being able to go to their Facebook stream and just look down at it. And then I'm like, I didn't really care. I love these people. Don't get me wrong. I like these people. They are wonderful people, and I wish them all the best in the world. But what did we do before Facebook? We lost contact. What's wrong with losing contact? There's nothing wrong with that. If I see him again, if I'm at the airport and I happen to run across my old boss, I'll be like, what's been going on, man? It's been like 6 years and I have no idea what's on your Facebook. So let's go in, let's chat for 30 minutes and get it all out and we'll move on from life. And it's polite and it's great. I didn't have to see their Trump phase. I didn't have to see their Mike Pence phase. I didn't have to see them rooting for Betsy DeVos. I didn't have to see them, at that alt-right rally carrying a tiki torch. I didn't have to see any of that shit. I get to see them at the airport and like, how are your kids? Good? Okay, bye. That's it. Mm-hmm. It's a change in scope of what I really want to know about people, and I just don't want to know. And some of these Cubs and some of these fans, they're great people. Don't get me wrong. And when I see them again, I will do my best to try to remember them. But you know what I'm not about to do? See, what we're not going to do is I'm not going to spend a week, in the middle of my week saying, oh, I just ran across a post from some guy I met at TBRU in 2011. Let me click on them and see what they've been up to for the last 10 years. Nope. Not doing that. Why? That sounds like a really nice gesture. It's really sweet. And I really wish I had the brain space for it, but I'm really going to try to put my brain to the paces of memorizing the activities of people that I think are vaguely important just because I want to fuck them someday. Or because I want to see them and be able to talk to them about their great-great-grandniece at the next family reunion. Or I want to be able to talk to my ex-boss from 3 jobs ago about how great it is that his kid is in the military. Don't give a fuck. We'll catch up and we'll get that over in 30 minutes and I'll leave you alone and never have to look at your ass again. Because that's how our parents did, it's how our grandparents did, and they were doing pretty good at maintaining good relationships with people. I don't know why am I cluttering my brain with all this additional information about people?
So let me ask you this then, Hadrian. Sort of a little devil's advocate. This social networking platforms through the internet gave us the ability to understand and learn and know far more about people that we never knew before. And yes, it problematically, in a way, from a certain viewpoint, got us to where we are today with our current strife of our nation. I'll put it that way. However, that's because we had the ability to know more about other people and to learn about that, where if we fly back to, like, say, the 70s into the 80s, do you think that we falsely understood the people that we were connected to in our lives? Because
totally.
Like we only saw that one aspect of them. We only spent that 30 minutes like every time we saw them chit-chatting every so many years.
The fantasy of the silent majority as people like to call upon. Oh, people are with me. They're voting for me because I have the silent majority on my side. That kind of bullshit. I understand. And that's because people didn't really know or be able to see the metrics of people like they can nowadays. I agree. Yeah, there is a point where keeping up with people in a group of people makes sense, and I'm happy to have, and I'm happy to admit that I do have a social media that is connected to family and really close friends. It's not Facebook, and it's not perfect, and I have enough information about a handful of people. But do I really need to keep up with that many people over the years? At the end of at max, I had 5,000 people on Facebook as friends. At the end of it, I whittled it down to 700, and then I eventually got down to 400 in the week before I finally decided to kill Facebook, and it wasn't enough. So I am saying I'm not saying there's not a place for social media, but I am saying that being able to turn the prism on people and look at them from a certain context, which my Twitter accounts allow me to do. And I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I have like my one that I have friends and family connected to, and I don't have to actively look at their bullshit. I can go research it if I want to. Facebook forces you to actively look at all your friends' bullshit. Then I have my X-rated Twitter where I'm actually looking at people from a different point of view in the prism where I'm looking at them sexually. And they are presenting information in that way. And Mastodon and other platforms give you that ability too, where you are able to present yourself to different communities and keep yourself segmented as a whole person. And that's great and that's wonderful. And that's something that social media should be striving towards. But Facebook, specifically, the policy change that I hated about Facebook, that I think was the signal that they really were a lost platform, was back in 2010 when Facebook took away the ability for you to not have people add you as a friend. There used to be this really cool setting that said you could take away the add as a friend button. It was basically a don't call me, I'll call you button. And I thought it was great because it let me network on my terms. I'm going to network with these people because I like them. But once I was able to plug my phone number in, and that was a dirty trick of Facebook, by the way. I'll talk about this in a second. Hold on. But once they started using phone numbers and address books to force people to connect in really awful ways, like, the poor psychiatrist who has multiple clients that don't know about each other, and suddenly they're all aware of each other because they all had you in their phone book, and now they're all friends on Facebook. Stupid shit like that. There was some really dirty stuff. Between that and forcing you to be friends, forcing people to network, because the more network connections you have, the more data they can harvest from that. That's where it became a problem. It was no longer me presenting myself to the world. It was me giving everything to Facebook for them to show me to the world, of whoever had the most money or whoever had my phone number.
Right.
So I'm not saying that social media doesn't have a place, and you're right. The way the things my parents don't have the best idea either when it comes to keeping in touch either. But there was a healthy balance somewhere in the middle, that there was a place in the last 15 years where we had it right. And we've lost that in the recent years. And Trump is an example of that. We've lost control of our own social media because we're being exploited and only being shown the worst parts of ourselves as a collective community.
Breathe. So
I told you I love a soapbox.
But
because I'm going to stand on it.
Well, or cement patio, whichever the case may be. So, I think you bring up really good, valid points about you decided for yourself. I funneled down. Like I eliminated, I cut the fat, I did all these things, and it just still wasn't good enough for your personal taste. And you bring up an excellent point that I think people forgot about in relation to the phone number issue, specifically with Facebook and how all of that cross stuff. And it's funny because someone just posted today on Twitter, and it got the biggest chuckle out of me, really inappropriately. And it's about the fact, or actually, no, it's on Facebook. They posted it, and it's about how they miss on Facebook that people would be suggested as friends that they saw on Tumblr in a post that they didn't even know the person in real life. How that data was cross-platform connecting. And so you're like, this is just an example. You're fapping to content on Tumblr, and then within 24 hours, that person is a friend suggestion to you. And you're like, right. Oh, wait. Like, that's what we're talking about, the data, like how crazy it got in terms of platform. And I thought your example was excellent about like all of these individuals who have health privacy issue, and yet like their stuff kind of gets spilled because like their phone numbers were all cross-connected, and they
Right.
were able to establish and say, oh, well, because all of you have this one key point, you all must therefore be aware of each other. No, they're not aware of each other. It's very similar to the craziness in a podcast I listened to from a couple years ago, where Target actually sent an ad to a young woman about stuff for having a baby. She didn't even know she was pregnant yet, and her father found out about it because he saw the ad, like how it was a custom email or something to her, and like flipped out about it because she was young. I think she was a teen. And like, so it was an amazing story about how the data that's revealed by the navigation of what we do, like, is basically just a constantly an open door as to who we are, what we do, what jazz.
Yep.
And so I can understand why you and other individuals are saying, to hell with it. Like, I'm just gonna take myself away and do other stuff. And I'll admit, Hadrian, when you said like you were leaving Facebook and some other people have, it freaks me out a little bit because there's a part of me that's like, well, how am I going to stay in touch? And then I'm like, okay, do I or do I not have their contact information? You know, like a phone number, an email, you know, old school shit, basically, you know, to know that I can reach out if I want to, or, you know, have that.
I will say that I mentioned earlier that I create a to-do list, and I kind of do have a few people in there that are important to me that I'm just kind of like, you know, there's your Venice Cubs, your Peters, that sort of, you know, just say, I need to catch up with these people like once a quarter, once a month, whatever I'm doing. And it's just a little reminder, hey, maybe message so-and-so, check out what's going on, because they were people I wanted to keep up with. And something I've found that, I'm texting them one-on-one, I'm calling them, and I'm discovering that they're feeding me what's going on in their lives with all the maturity they have on that day. Not a post they made 2 months ago where maybe they didn't know something, or maybe the subject wasn't clear yet, or maybe, you know, life hadn't shaken out the way they thought it was going to. And I'll talk to them on the phone, like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, well, I saw, like, before I left Facebook that you were having problems with your job. Like, oh yeah, lost that job, got a new job, no big deal, life moved on. Instead, but then I realized that sometimes that browsing through people's streams and, you know, the walls of information we have, the little where you scroll back through their lives a little bit, that you can really get a bad view of somebody. I've looked through people's, and I remember I'm making all these judgments. Oh, well, they lost their job, their boyfriend left them. Yeah, they're partying and they're having a good time, but, you know, maybe they partied too hard. I mean, you start piecing together a picture of someone based on snippets of information. And then when I finally do talk to them, I'm like, oh, well, there they are. I know they lost their job and thinking they've had a really rocky summer. Do I want to be associated with this person? And then, but if I didn't have all that information and I got it from the source right away with all the maturity they have on that day, they're like, oh yeah, life's good. I'm taking care of things. I got a new job. I'm dating someone. You know, you're like, look at how positive they are now, instead of looking at the negativity of the last few weeks that I've preloaded because I researched them before I talked to them. Now I don't have access to that. I have to go on their face value, which I think is a little bit healthier. And yeah, I've got some friends on Twitter. I've got some social media, and I can go check on them. But what do I really want to know about them?
Right. Well, and you bring up an excellent.
Yeah, go ahead.
You bring up an excellent point about, like, how much do you care about the individual? And I'll say this. Like, it's interesting because I was talking about that whole, like, that post on Facebook that made me laugh today, that someone said, you know, I'm going to miss, you know, being on Facebook and having people I used to smack it to on Tumblr being suggested to me. But I get it, because part of that issue was that reveal of, oh, that object is a person. And that's what social media, I think, creates weirdly, even though we know these people. Well, we could know these people. For me personally, 95 to 98% of everybody that I'm connected to on Facebook, I've literally met in real life. Because when I joined Facebook, I took it very weirdly seriously, the whole concept of they are friends. So I took it by definition in my brain of I literally know them. And people used to give me shit for it for a long time. And they would be like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, I don't know them. Like, and then it cracked me up. Right. David, you're right. All these years later, that became a thing. It was like, I don't know you. New phone. Who is? Like, new account. Like, I don't recognize you. And it's like, you don't get to collect. And Hadrian, you're sort of an example in a way of, like, within our own community, this weird celebrity thing that came about where I have other friends who they had to create multiple Facebook accounts because of the 5,000 cap, because all these people wanted to be their friends online and constantly be in touch with them, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though they hadn't even met them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's impossible almost.
And,
I've been,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I've been noticing, especially recently, as I've been out more to family and stuff like that. I'm getting random requests for friends, and I don't know these people. And honestly, some of it is family members who are, I don't want to say necessarily distant, but are more on my father's side of the family, which I don't know as well. And I'm suddenly like, who is this? I know we had the same last name, but I don't recall ever meeting you. And if I have, maybe it's been like, 20, 30 years, like when I was a baby or younger, young. And so it's becoming very interesting and odd to me that through those connections, I'm getting weirder connections, and I'm hesitating to add people just because, one, I don't necessarily want all of my shit, because I don't put anything really on filter in Facebook except for friends. Occasionally I have a couple, but most of the time everything is, pretty open. So if you want to know me, you're going to know me because of my Facebook. Like,
right.
You're going to know everything. And that's, good and bad. So do I really want this person who I don't really know to know all of that? And usually the answer is no. And they send in my, friends request for a few weeks, and either I add them or I don't. Some I have, and one I didn't, because I really honestly do not know who the fuck they were.
Right. And I'm something, a theme of my getting close to 40 has been really, I don't have time for that. That's been my number one statement. This has really been helping me deconstruct a lot of the rules that we build up over our lives, that we just wear ourselves down by thinking we have to do other things. And I'm realizing I don't. I have two Twitters. That's enough. And every now and then something leaks from one Twitter to the other. Every now and then somebody says, oh, you have another Twitter, I'm going to add you there. And their name is, Fisting Daddy 86 or something like that. And I have to deal with them liking my stuff. Right, exactly. Or Sloppy Bottom 23 soon, apparently. But, there's I have to deal with it. But I'm realizing that it's, I do want to manage my context and provide zones where people can be comfortable. But at the end of the day, you chose to follow me. I don't wake up in the morning saying, what do I have to do to myself to make myself acceptable to my mother? What do I have to do to myself to make myself acceptable to my 60-year-old grandmother of a teacher, of a boss? What do I have to do? I don't think about that. So I'm like, I'm just living my life. I'm going to go through and do what I want to do, and I'm going to enjoy myself, and I encourage you to do the same. And if we want to do that, that's great. And if you want to connect with me on a platform, you have to know that you're going to get all of me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things, I'm going to try to be respectful. There's always two sides of the coin, and I think two is enough. Two sides are plenty. And people have to accept that, if they're going to join me on a platform, things may happen. I'm a fully functioning adult. I'm not just a project manager at a defense contractor in the middle of freaking nowhere. That's not all I do. At the end of 8 hours a day, I don't cease to be a person. No, I lube up and grab a dildo and have a really good time with some poppers. So there's and I think there is a problem being able to present yourself and control your presentation on the internet. And I think that there's respectful, and then there's other people. Once I'm connecting to someone else, I have to accept that they have a life beyond what I have, the context that I know them.
And that's been the thing I've been noticing, especially a lot on Facebook, that a lot of people took these rules, regulations, and changes as not calling out, but like telling people not to, how to live. Like a lot of it had to do with like LGBT and what have you. And I agree that I can present who I am on this platform, and fuck you if you think otherwise. On the flip of that, and this is always going to be my personal thing about a lot of it, is that this is a platform that you are choosing to use, that has rules and regulations and what have you that they can put upon you because you're using this site for free. Right. Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, what have you. Right. You're using these for free, and therefore they can put whatever they want on you, and you can either do it or not.
And to circle back to the concept of the topic for today. I wanted to kind of ask this point. I think where Oath went in a direction that we're not agreeing with is, and I've said this for years about Facebook, I would pay for it if I could. If there was a membership subscription concept that allowed me to have more control over me, my data, and the stuff, then yes, I would pay for it, as opposed to the ad stuff.
Here's the kick. I'm sorry, it's getting dark here, so I'm leaning in. Here's the kick-ass part. If Tumblr had done that instead and said every account has to be tied to a credit card, if it's $1 a month, if it's $1 a year, no matter what, but there has to be an active credit card attached to the account, one that can be verified, all the other good stuff. You know what they would have had access to right away? All those motherfuckers posting child porn, they would have been able to look them up like that and hand their names over to the authorities. It would have been super easy. They could have legitimized the platform, protected the sexual community on Tumblr, made a buttload of money. They could have really changed the game and made it themselves secure, safe, and profitable in one go.
I agree.
And I don't know why we're not there. Why are we in that world? Why isn't Facebook remodeling them wholesale, saying we're putting your data and your privacy back in your hands because we don't want to monetize that anymore. Just pay us what we would have made off of you every year anyway.
Well, and that's kind of one of the questions that I had that we didn't get to, and we're not going to have the answers to it, which is simply, does anyone know the numbers? Like, what are the percentages of accounts that say for Tumblr that were not safe for work versus safe for work? Because I don't know much of the safe for work side. I'm going to own it. There's a ton of stuff out there that apparently is pop culture reblog and whatever, and I don't know any of that. This
is the scary part. You want to know what kind of tags are safe for work on Tumblr? White power, nationalism, alt-right, those kind of things. Or, what was one I saw? War on Ukraine by some Russian blog. You'll see a lot of people talking about war, hate, crime, and killing people and doing all kinds of horrible racism. You'll see a lot of crap like that on Tumblr that isn't flagged as explicit right now. But God help if I show a nipple.
Yep.
Right, because it has to do with the human body and sexuality. It's being flagged, which is part of where I'm in the camp and agreement that a lot of people were posting in the past 5 days to say, well, this is the end of Tumblr. The platform itself will implode. But I question that because I just don't know the reality of how much of the platform pie, like how big the portion is, the slices are of everyone being locked down and leaving. If, yes, Apple is supposedly going to make a move to buy them, or Tumblr is trying to get Oath or Verizon stock to go. I'm just kind of wondering, it must be significant enough to make these decisions, because I can't imagine. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm 50-50 on understanding that people are so stupid in power that they would not say to themselves, oh, by doing this, we could actually fuck ourselves over financially.
Well, AOL's still around.
It is?
It still lives. It's around. It still has a client. You can still use
and I'm not being funny.
Seriously. Yahoo's still around.
Well,
Yahoo
I know
groups still exist. I believe they still do.
Yahoo groups exist, and so does email. It's the only things I know about Yahoo.
MySpace still exists. Foursquare. A lot of those companies still exist. There are levels of survival all these companies have been willing to accept in order to chug through one more year and say, hey, we made a little bit of profit. So Tumblr's going to do the same thing. It's going to linger around for so long until it gets traded around a few times. It'll get bought by a few companies and sold, just like MySpace was. It'll find some sort of community and get a few exclusivity things. If my theory of Apple buying them isn't true, which is still kind of a long shot, but I kind of think it would be awesome. But there's things that there's a level of existence that Tumblr has been willing to accept, and it looks like they've bought into that. And I forgot where you were going. What was it? What was the question?
No, all I was saying is basically
it's dark and cold here.
No, I know. Just to wrap up, I was basically saying the answer that we don't have is, where are the numbers? Because I kind of wonder about that. There was a part of me probably about 7-8 years ago that said, if Facebook would just charge everybody $1 a month.
Yeah.
For $12 for a year times the billion users or whatever, you mean to tell me you're making more than that in advertising? It was crazy to me. I'm like, actually, I think you could have done both. I think you could have had subscription with advertising in which a ton of it was eliminated. You know what I mean?
It could have been as simple as
It's very simple in sales. People are willing to pay for anything.
Yeah.
Shut up, Siri. So the thing is that if, it's like, so I say $1, but if they created a crazy tiered system in which they were like $1, $5, $10, some people would pay $10 a fucking month to have nearly 100% control and 0 ads, you name it, across the board.
Agreed.
Right. And, something that isn't talked about the thing that's going on with Tumblr is how it's affecting women. Because the law statistics, and we don't have a lot of numbers, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence that women were using Tumblr as a sexual liberation platform. That they start off in the fan forums of My Little Pony or Steven Universe or something like that. But Tumblr's been around for 10 years. Some of those people joined when they're 23 or 13, and now they're 23. They went through puberty on this platform. They grew and learned who they were. And some of the liberation we see now is probably because of the access they had on Tumblr and the way they were able to express themselves. And there was a lot of places where Tumblr could have changed their model to say, okay, you've been a free account up till now. Do you want to go ad free, or do you want to check that explicit box that says that you're now a porn blog and now we'll charge you? There are opportunities in there to monetize that kind of growth in people, because the people were there and they were moving through the platform as they grew up. There was a lot of chances to make a lot of money and not piss people off and embrace the whole movement. And instead we've chosen something else.
And you bring up an excellent point, Hadrian, I want to end with, which is there's a community, like there's practically half a generation that has utilized this platform. I mean, I'm going to make a statement which is probably false, but I don't think it's too far-fetched. The woman who created She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, the new series on Netflix, which is very pro to the feminine side and LGBT. Like, there's a lot of stuff behind that. Even with Steven Universe, those content creators came up in a time and an age in which platforms allowed them to maneuver and find themselves. I mean, all 4 of us have had that opportunity in which we figured things out. I've learned stuff about BDSM, leather, and kink and all of that through this platform. I don't know how many blogs I've read of postings of questions and answers and advice and things about, proper, being a sub or a dom and all this kind of stuff that was, maybe it came from another place. It was copy pasted. I don't know, because I'm not on the other places. So I think you bring up an excellent point that what this is going to do to the community can be really impactful if we don't find a path to keep us connected, as opposed to this fragmented thing that you brought up before. And what's going to happen with that? Like, the triple X factor is maybe the commonality that we shared, but there was so much more to it than that. And that other stuff also is not going to survive.
Right.
I mean, in the past 3 years, I don't know how many accounts I saw of people creating amazing art, just stuff that I never even knew existed. And my goodness, like growing up as a kid in the 70s or the 80s, had I known that stuff was out there or could ever be out there, it would have changed my entire development of my personality to see that stuff and be like, oh, that's a thing. Like somebody made that, and like, it exists in the world.
Right.
So.
And that's a difference in the way we engage content too. I mean, it used to be that you were expected to grow up with content to a certain point, then drop it, and then adopt new content when you became an adult. That's the way I think our parents, maybe the baby boomers, were brought up a little bit. Like, oh, when you get done with kids stuff, we're ready to play with guns. And I think that since the internet has given us the ability, and 90s kids specifically are really, really nostalgic for some reason, because we got to see this changeover from a world that wasn't connected into a world that is.
Right.
People grow up their content. They grow up with it, and they grow the content with themselves, and they let it form them as an adult. People don't put cartoons away just because they turn 16 anymore. True. They don't stop reading comic books because they turn 18. They don't stop going to, Magic the Gathering on Friday nights because they turn 21. They keep doing this stuff well into adulthood. They make that part of who their personality and their ability to learn, because they learned from those platforms. Right. And they've now turned those into adult themed things.
Right. And we have entire industries built off of generational nostalgia, as a lack of a better word. Like everyone kind of, pisses on Hollywood all the time about how there's no new original content. Do you know what just dropped in the past 24 hours? a trailer for the new Avengers movie. I don't even follow comic books. I haven't hardly seen any of these damn movies, but I will tell you what, I watched that trailer and I had goosebumps because I understood conceptually what it means. And I was like, this is batshit crazy. I thought the Captain Marvel trailer was amazing, and then I saw the end game for Avengers, and I was like, okay, not as good, but still, like, crazy. And I'm not even a part of, like, who that population is really meant to serve. I'm adjacent to it, but you're damn Skippy. I'm, like, still connected, and I get it.
Yeah.
See, I live in Hollywood, just to brag a little bit, but I live here. And I was talking to somebody, and he told me something that was really interesting. And people say Hollywood's out of ideas; they're just pumping out the same old shit. No. It's like saying that if you spent every day in a third grade classroom or every year in a third grade classroom, it would be the same old content every single time because it doesn't really change a lot. What Hollywood is doing is reteaching a younger generation how stories work, how complicated, interconnected world building works. When you see these stories being told over and over again, you're right, they're not for you. They're for somebody else who hasn't seen this yet. And it's for someone else who needs to learn how, because people told Marvel for decades, oh, you'll never get a movie crossover on film. People won't understand it. Captain America and Spider-Man in the same film, that'll never work. Right. And people said, no, you can if you build them up to it. If you give them the concepts and show them these people all exist, if you give them a stinger at one trailer and it opens up on another, it's connective tissue. So Hollywood does regurgitate stuff, but it's because we're re-teaching a new generation how world building and storytelling work.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely said.
Sorry. Those aren't my words. Like I said, somebody who works for one of the studios out here educated me about that. Nice. I did want to close on something else. I hate to change gears so aggressively, but
it's okay.
Bad laws are a thing that exist as long as governments do. And the European Union is working on something called Article 13. And Article 13 threatens the rest of Tumblr. The people who are left there, the people who are posting their Steven Universe memes and their My Little Ponies and their Battlestar Galacticas and their all the other gift sets they want. The European Union is working on a law that would change their content filtering or require all websites to engage in content filtering. So if anyone says, I don't want this picture to ever be seen on your website ever again, that company has to comply or be faced with massive fines. And on the terms of like copyright infringement, not just, oh, you posted a bad picture, remove it. No, like they have to not only remove the picture, they have to keep it off the site permanently. So that means the intelligence they're asking for the internet to come up with is really, really aggressive. And I don't think it's a direction we want our technology to go in, because once we can scan every image at that kind of speed, the internet's done. I think everyone will be forced to move to some other form of networking. That we won't be, at least in the European Union, it won't exist. And of course, everything the European Union comes out of Silicon Valley, mostly here in California. So those are the kind of things that are going to impact this. Bad laws are always on the books and always being worked on by bad people. So if you live in the EU, maybe talk to some of your leadership, your politicians and your leadership to see what can be done to make this a better law. Because GDPR was great, and it's the kind of thing that's helping Facebook get its shit together and exposing Facebook for its shit. But this one has the potential to fuck up everything that's left of the internet after the sex has been stripped out.
No, I hear what you're saying, Adrian. I think you bring up an excellent point that, like, concept notion is good. The implementation, again, is where the issue becomes more problematic, because the humanity is being taken out of it. And I get that laws are usually passed on a higher level because they can't get into the nitty gritty and handle the 7 billion different variables of what it's going to do. But that's part of the issue. Don't handle 7 billion. Perhaps maybe handle 500,000. Like, make the effort and the work on the stuff that's actually majority affecting whatever it's going to be. Because what you just said, I didn't know about with Article 13, and that's could be really problematic, because I could see where some content creators won't care. Like, this is a statement that I've heard before, if I get this correct, in which there's dynamic differences between these two outer space franchises and how they handle their licensing and content. One of them doesn't care what you do with it as long as you don't kind of cross a morality line concept. You could basically make damn near anything with it, and they're cool with it because they understand that it actually helps the brand. The other one, on the other hand, wants tight control of it and won't let anybody really hardly do anything outside of a very set kind of way without paying into it.
Right.
And that's why there's these two fandoms that have kind of these very different personalities, because one's locked in a box kind of, and the other one's like, sky's the limit. We don't care. And even though Disney bought it, Disney's still cool with it.
I was about to say, you got your Cartoon Network and you got your Disney. Cartoon Network, go ahead, use our stuff. It's part of our advertising campaign. We want you to do this. And Disney's like, did we make it? Did we distribute it? Are you paying for it? No. They really want to smack you on the nose as quickly as possible. So, and luckily we have something here called fair use, and hopefully that'll prevail. But, I mean, I would much rather, if I was a politician, I'd much rather disappoint a few thousand companies out there making content than disappoint billions and billions of people who make up those companies anyway.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
a great way to put a pin on it.
This was a lively hour.
Indeed.
Plus.
Plus, yeah. And,
Ooh, an hour and like 15 minutes, whatever.
something like that. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So I'm gonna make sure to try to put all of this onto the blog, so all of our notes, so you can see exactly what we have and the section 50 and the Facebook thing, etc. You can find that at cubsoutloud.com. You can shoot us an email. Tell us what you think of all these. Send us your opinions. We'd like to hear it at cubsoutloud@gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail, 60 or otherwise, at 361-COL-TALK. That's 361-265-8255. You can find us on our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Okay,
But not Tumblr.
we're still on Tumblr for a little while longer.
I just put triple question marks after our Tumblr because we don't we expect to be what is it? Thanos snapped probably in 11 days. It's a horrible pop culture reference, but
I'm trying to do the right angle. Anyways, you can also join our Telegram chat where porn is totally acceptable. tinyurl.com/telegram-col. When you want to find out when we're going to be going live, subscribe to our Google Calendar at tinyurl.com/calendar-col. That way you can see when we have everything set in stone, and even who might actually be here, such as Daddy Hadrian. I like calling you Daddy Hadrian. Anyway.
I don't mind at all.
Oh, okay. You can also visit our merch store at zazzle.com/cubsoutloud, where you can get things such as this Cubs Out Loud version 3 sweatshirt, a version 2 t-shirt, which Damon has, and of course, what Gary has, Sloppy Bottom 23.
well, this was this is an example of a shirt that we made based on a funny moment that happened in a podcast episode. So yes, we did a hello, my name is, and then we had it wrote in Sloppy Bottom 23, and on the bottom it says, and I listen to Cubs Out Loud. And it has our logo and stuff on the back. It was just a cute, funny thing.
Yeah. So if you have more memes that you might like to see in the store, just let us know at those various things. You can also become one of our bosses. Be a patron at patreon.com/cubsoutloud for as little as $1 a month, and as much as you want if you want to do higher than $1. I mean, we're not going to argue. And you can get some neat little rewards and even join our patron hangout, which will be the next one will be this month, isn't it, right, Gary?
Yeah, at the end of this month, around the holidays, New Year's, somewhere in there.
You can subscribe to us on iTunes and rate us there. Subscribe to us on Google Play Podcasts and give us a thumbs up on Stitcher Radio. You can find me anywhere on the internet. Box Set, Box Puppy, Box Cub, Box something or other. That includes Growler, which I've been using quite frequently as of late because apparently working overnights increases my libido.
Nice.
Daddy.
Well,
There you go. So I am Theater Cub 79 on Tumblr, but or you can find me as Theater Cub 79 on Facebook. Or you can find me as Pup_Umbra on Twitter.
Hey,
That's probably
that's
that's
There you
If you
Oh, what? Hold on. And Skype crash. Just as we're wrapping up. Please hold.
what is replacing my Tumblr, it's Gabber73XXX is the account.
Can you repeat
replacing
that? Because apparently my Skype decided to crash.
Which part?
Everything.
For me, just specifically me?
For you.
Okay. If you want to get in touch with me online, pretty much type in Gabber73. It's GARBEAR73. However, if you're trying to look for the Twitter that replaced the Tumblr that we expect to go away in 11 days, you're going to need to type in Gabber73XXX, and that will be that particular account. Hadrian, I believe nothing's changed with you from the last time we talked. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, it's thehadrianshow.com.
That's right. That domain will continue to exist even if my Tumblr does not. I own that and I'm taking it with me. So I'm going to a WordPress and it'll be my own personal deal, and that'll probably be where I live for a little while. But you can also find me on the Hadrian Show at on Twitter. I'm also there. And if you want to see the dirty stuff, just go for Pup Hulk, PUPHULK on Twitter, and you'll find all my goodies there too. Be warned, there are things you may not know about me. Good luck.
I am now going to call Pup Hulk. I haven't been on Twitter in years, but that's another matter altogether. Everybody is frozen but
tweet.
Because of the Skype thing. So, in any case, we're going to wrap this up. So, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Greta, you can't see me waving, but good night.
You can't see individuals, but bye.
Bye. You guys are beautiful.
So that was a lovely bunch of tech junk at the end.
Just Skype suddenly crashed. Hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
I got a question for you on technical stuff real quick, Jeff, after we go off air.
Oh, okay. If we don't have anything funny, I'll stop streaming right now.
Yeah, not really, I don't think.
Okay. Good night, everybody.